ladies and gentlemen, captains of industry, chief executives, and managing directors. I want to begin by thanking you for the invitation to join you at this 7th Ghana CEO Summit. This invitation appears to be a natural follow-up to the opportunity you offered me to interact productively with you at your last cocktail at the Accra Marriott Hotel. I'm naturally a positive-minded and open-minded person who is very reflective, especially when it comes to my country, Ghana. For some time now, my reflections have centered on the downturn in our political governance system and the adverse economic and investment environment currently facing our country. As one who has led this country before, my attention is not only on the current appalling situation in which we currently find ourselves, but also on the pragmatic steps that need to be taken to ensure an economic recovery and a sustainable stabilization of our investment environment. I'm glad to be speaking to you today on your chosen theme, economic sovereignty, sustainable corporate governance, digital industrial transformation, new paths for growth and prosperity, a private-public sector CEO dialogue and learning. It's quite a mouthful. These engagements with you align with similar interactions I've had with you at your end-of-year cocktail, and in the past few months in Brussels, Belgium, where I had a tour and a discussion with the EU and European investors, and lately at the Chatham House in London. Later tonight, I leave for Seoul, South Africa, to engage business leaders and speak at the Korea-Africa Business Summit to continue my quest to attract viable investments and businesses to Ghana and to Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, as you well know, just about a week ago, my party endorsed my candidature to lead the National Democratic Congress to the polls in 2024. Indeed, my meeting here with you today is my first public engagement since I addressed my party and the nation on Monday, 15th May, accepting the nomination. My party and the NDC is the one that midwifed the birth of the Fourth Republic and gave unto us the present 1992 Constitution. We therefore have a strong commitment to the tenets of the Constitution and the democratic principles enshrined therein. It is therefore obligatory in my party to be democratically elected, and running against two opponents, I had to crisscross the length and breadth of this nation, covering about 14,000 kilometers and visiting every single part of our dear nation in order to be elected flag bearer of our party. Notwithstanding the withdrawal of one of my opponents at the very last minute, we managed to clinch a landslide victory. The margin of victory was historic, approximately 99% of the valid votes cast, and is the most votes ever polled by a candidate at any time in my party's electoral history. This for me was humbling in many significant ways, because it indicated in the stronger terms the singular unifying focus and intent of the NDC to win the 2024 elections. On a personal level, it signifies the onerous, almost sacred responsibility and trust reposed in me. And for me, it is a responsibility that I accept in all humility and modesty, recognizing the Herculean task that lies ahead with regards to restoring our economy back to the path of growth and stability. Having been President and Commander-in-Chief of this country before, I can assure you, our captains of business and industry, and the people of Ghana, that I am determined to work with everyone, irrespective of your political affiliation, ethnicity, or nationality, to rebuild the Ghana we want together. Today, per your theme for this auspicious occasion, if I speak about economic sovereignty, I'm not by any means propounding the absence of interdependence and interrelatedness between Ghana and the rest of the global community. Neither am I attempting radical nationalization of our economic prospects. I agree with you that we must explore the critical aspects of economic sovereignty, sustainable corporate governance, and digital industrial transformation if we are to chart the course of a brighter future for our country. Let me emphasize that my view of economic sovereignty encapsulates the desire to relate to the global world, including Africa, on terms that are beneficial to Ghana, on terms that align with our value systems, create viable businesses for Ghanaians, and generates decent and sustainable jobs for our young people. We're committed to meaningfully partnering the private sector, both domestic and foreign, for sustainable growth and unleashing the potential of the private sector to contribute its share to uplifting the Ghanaian economy. I do not see the private sector as merely an avenue to fund our taxes. There's a story of Aesop, a fairy tale by Aesop, of the hen that laid a golden egg each day. The greed of the owner led him to kill the hen in order to extract all the golden eggs that were in its belly at once. Alas, he lost the hen and his regular source of income. We face a similar situation in Ghana today. We're in danger of taxing our few businesses to their graves and losing the daily golden egg that they produce for us. The higher tax burden imposed recently and government's agreement with IMF to remove majority of VAT and duty exemptions creates a very challenging environment for businesses that have decided to remain in Ghana despite the poor investment climate that has been created by this administration. Government's agreement with a fund to increase electricity and water tariffs quarterly creates an additional burden. And let's face it, as captains of industry, you know that Ghana has lost her pride of place as the best place to do business in West Africa. The flowers that attracted you to set up your businesses in Ghana are gradually withering away. Many of your colleagues, CEOs, have shut shop and left our shores, and several others have moved their headquarters and staff to neighboring countries. Having family and friends who own businesses, I know about the endless tax audits dating back several years that you continue to face. The call to appear at IOCO, the Economic and Organized Crime Unit, the harassment over social security payments, multiple fees and charges for clearing imports or exports at our ports, etc. Indeed, there are many of you today who use the free port of Lomé to import your goods and track them all the way into Ghana because of the plethora of fees and charges that we have at our ports. In any case, who can tell me what happened to the famous mantra, and I quote, from taxation to production? There's dwindling production and gargantuan taxation. Anyway, sorry for my digression. Economic sovereignty in this modern era, viewed through the lens of viable, healthy, and beneficial interdependence and interrelatedness, must become the foundation for social growth and progress. And I may add, the quest for economic sovereignty must certainly go beyond the flowery and impactless speech about Ghana beyond aid. Indeed, our return to the IMF, cap in hand, has made our Ghana beyond aid policy the butt of jokes amongst many commentators in the world. It will take a resolute and committed political will to determine our own economic destiny. It will further require the ability to determine our own economic policies, make decisions that prioritize the well-being of our citizens, and create an environment conducive for the advancement of sustainable growth and development for job creation. Ladies and gentlemen, 1 year ago, top government officials, despite the deteriorating state of our economy, continued to maintain that all was well. Doctored fiscal and budget data by the Ministry of Finance and aided by the Central Bank painted an optimistic picture which was far from the actual reality. Government was in sync in unanimously dismissing and disassociating themselves from ever seeking an intervention from the IMF. We're told bluntly by the government that they were never going to go back to the IMF. And even 2 weeks before the decision was announced, government officials said, we will not go to IMF today or tomorrow, or as long as the MPP remains in government. To them, because of the untruths they peddled in the past about going to the IMF, for them going to the IMF was perceived as an admission that they had failed as a government. Truth is, IMF or no IMF, the economic management team led by our dear Vice President has been nothing but a spectacular failure. Many, including you, the business people, and myself, sounded the alarm bells and made suggestions on how to ameliorate the situation long even before the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine war. But government will have none of it. Today the song has changed. Not only do they associate going to the IMF, not only do they associate with the IMF, but they also see the international financial institutions as the only source of hope out of a crisis they not only created, but deepened. The fund has finally approved a $3 billion program for Ghana to support reform to address its current economic and financial crisis. I quote, "This comes quite late in the day, considering the human cost, the degradation of lives of retirees who hold Government of Ghana bonds, the possible erosion of the savings of our middle class, loss of capital to do business, and the deterioration of our local currency." Ladies and gentlemen, we could have averted this catastrophe. Unfortunately, the fact is that a know-all finance minister and a so-called solid economic management team went on a borrowing spree with minimal investment in capital and infrastructure. They burned through in 6 years domestic revenue and debt of almost 800 billion Ghana cedis. At your end-of-year cocktail event at the Marriott Hotel, we all were discussing how we can come together and help, if not solve, reduce the unemployment menace we face while increasing productivity and service delivery. Today, not only is our young workforce trooping out of the country in droves, but it also now includes our experienced and trained human resources in our schools, hospitals, and other skilled and essential service workers. A steady but determined stream of young people and professionals embarking on mass migration out of the shores of our country is a symptom of an insidious malgovernance disease afflicting our nation today. Our nation loses twice over when we lose some of our best human resource material, while at the same time the unemployed at home remain unemployed and unskilled. Democracy is ruled by the majority, but I dare say consensus building is at the heart of democracy. Building consensus does not subtract from democracy. It does not diminish a leader. It actually unites society in all its diversity behind government policy. And that is why I found this government's intransigence to seek consensus behind its economic policy and important social interventions such as the free SHS very difficult to understand. Several years ago, I suggested to this government that a century-like forum be held to build a consensus and agree a homegrown fiscal consolidation program. This would have brought all segments of Ghanaian society on the same page about the true state of our economy and would have built a consensus on our program going into the IMF. Unfortunately, the obstinacy of this government to hold consultation with anyone has resulted in an IMF agreement negotiated unilaterally by the Minister of Finance and without broader engagement with civil society, business, and the political opposition. I, like many other Ghanaians, including your respected selves, are seeing the terms of the IMF agreement for the first time only after it received board approval a few days ago. You are exactly one of the key stakeholders that must be engaged on behalf of the teeming youth of this country to help control the seeming quixotic and rudderless jaunts of this administration. Ladies and gentlemen, considering the direction in which our nation is headed, the future of our country absolutely depends on the conversations and plans with you, captains of business and industry. And this is the reason why I accepted to have this conversation with you today about the future of our dear country. And that is why I will state once again that your theme for today is so relevant and timely if we are to stop the hemorrhaging of both our financial and human resources. Ladies and gentlemen, the current state of our economy is dire, and this has resulted in an adverse environment for business and industry. Complaints I hear from the business community today are about the lack of access to credit, high inflation, high taxes, high import and export duties and levies, high-handed regulatory environment, depreciating local currency, harassment by the GRA. And I hear the CEO of GRA is here, if you're listening. Deteriorating infrastructure, among others. Your duty is to run your businesses profitably and create opportunities for employment in Ghana. Our duty as political leaders is to create a conducive, predictable environment and a level playing field for your businesses to thrive. Unfortunately, all the indices show that government is not living up to its part of the bargain. As inflation rises, unemployment has worsened to historic proportions. The statistics from the various sectors are neither uplifting nor comforting. For those of you in the agricultural sector, the 2.7% growth rate posted in 2016 has become a paltry 0.7% in 2022. The manufacturing sector grew at 7.9% in 2016, and today is down to 4.5% in 2022. The construction sector, which was leading in growth from 8.4% in 2016, is currently barely doing 4.2% in 2022. These are challenges that require a comprehensive and multifaceted approach to tackle effectively. As a nation, we must work collaboratively. Government, citizens, business leaders, researchers, civil society must obviously and visibly work together to achieve stability, tame inflation, and secure sustainable socio-economic growth for job creation. We must pursue policies and make decisions that prioritize the interests of our citizens. We must promote local industry, reduce dependency on imports, and support domestic production. And this is why, as president, I established the Ghana Export-Import Bank. This is also the reason we founded the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, with a vision to build and grow the fund into a sovereign wealth fund for strategic business partnerships. With a viable sovereign wealth fund, businesses could leverage its sinks for external credit, and maybe, just maybe, the international rating agencies may not have downgraded us beyond the current, beyond recognition. As it is, our banks are overexposed and avenues for foreign capital to fund businesses have also been constricted. We can do better. Let us work together to reverse the status quo. We must restore indigenous Ghanaian investment in the finance and banking sector and create a tiered banking system to finance different segments of the business market. We don't need every bank to be a category A bank with same capitalization. We can have different levels of capitalization that finance different segments of the business sector. As I stated in my acceptance speech in Tamale a week ago, this will give the opportunity for experienced banking hands, thousands of them who were laid off, to secure their careers back once again and move from the menial jobs that they were forced into with the closure of the indigenous banks. As a further assurance, as far as practicable, and note I said as far as practicable, licenses that were unjustly cancelled by this government will be restored. I cannot till this day understand why a 4 billion Ghana cedis problem was made to cost the taxpayers 25 billion cedis. These banks were asked to capitalize to 400 million. And if there were even 10 of them, that's 4 billion cedis. And yet with the closure of the banks, we incurred a public debt of 25 billion, guaranteeing depositors' accounts. Indeed, for some of these banks, there was no problem, purely politics or personal vendetta. One bank was shut down solely because its principal shareholder was being investigated for corruption in a case involving a state enterprise. If we are to create an environment for businesses to thrive, government must be apolitical in how it deals with businesses. It must create an environment where it allows businesses, no matter their political, ethnic, or other colorations, to thrive. Ladies and gentlemen, let us also recognize sustainable corporate governance as the backbone of a thriving economy to achieve economic sovereignty. As a nation, we must prioritize transparency, accountability, and ethical practices in our corporate and public sectors. We must establish robust frameworks that are measurable and key to the success of the public sector by fostering a culture of responsible management and oversight. We can attract both local and foreign investments, boost investor confidence, and create an environment that supports the growth of businesses, large and small. We need to extend the gains made so far in improving the mechanisms for business closure to include clear functional provisions and structures that protect businesses during unfortunate periods of business stress. Most of this business stress is actually created by government, creating adverse environments for businesses. By this, I'm suggesting that we firm up policies and mechanisms for distressed businesses to protect them from creditors and even the payment of statutory and regulatory fees during such unfortunate periods. This will allow them a real opportunity to resuscitate. The conventional reason has always been that businesses thrive when there is certainty in the regulation